Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Acquire podcast, where we talk about marketing, list building, lead generation, and launches. And we get into the deep dive of how this all works. And I'm your host, Jenny Wright. I'm a list build and lead generation strategist and CMO. And I'm really excited to talk today because we get into a case study. And we rarely have the opportunity to sort of pull the veil back on a business and talk about these sort of behind the scenes of how a business runs or a launch runs, which is what we're going to talk about today. And I find this really interesting. So we're going to get into it, and I'm excited. And it's all because Adam McChesney has agreed to talk about this. So we're going to get into it. I'm excited. Adam's here, and he has been a serial entrepreneur for a long time, but he's been doing this entrepreneurship thing basically since the pandemic. So it feels like a million years ago, but it's actually only a handful. So Adam, I'm really grateful that you're here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jenny. Excited to be here. And yeah, it's crazy. It'll be 4 years in July that I went full time, but it feels like much longer than that, as you mentioned. So happy to dive into to my story here today and share some stuff with your audience.
Amazing. So you're the founder of Builders of Authority, and you have a couple other things that you do on the side. You're also a speaker, and I mean, we were just talking about the fact that after this interview, you're jetting off to some event to do a bunch of things. So that's exciting. What is Builders of Authority?
Yeah, so I'll take you even back to kind of how Builders of Authority came about before I dive deep into that. But I just left the digital marketing agency that I was at, that I merged my original agency into back in 2021. So I've been in the agency space for almost 6 years now, both on my own, then a franchisee of a digital marketing agency, and then a partner of that franchise company. And throughout the entire process, I used personal branding to grow that business. And I hit my first 1 million in revenue in 15 months within the agency space. It's just really not heard of without doing a bunch of paid ads and having a large sales team where I was the person that was generating all the leads, closing a lot of the deals, and wearing multiple other hats inside the business. And so back in 2022, I started speaking on stage about personal branding to grow my marketing agency and what I did and all those different things. And I started to get a lot of attention because people were like, Adam, you're really putting yourself out there. You're practicing what you preach, but you're growing your agency at a rate that most companies just don't grow. We were named to the Inc. 5000 twice. We grew to multiple locations across the country. And people started to say, hey, Adam, do you have something? I love your talk. I love when you're a guest on the podcast, but do you have something that I can actually buy into to learn even more? And for 2 years after starting to speak, I didn't. And
Hmm.
so back in November, I finally launched Builders of Authority while I was still at the agency in the day to day. And finally, it came from a culmination of things of people just saying, hey, I'm ready to pay. I'm ready to join. I'm ready to do all these things. And we also had our firstborn, Murphy, back in September. And I just really wanted to work myself out of the agency. And ultimately, I said, hey, this is a first go at trying to do that. And so we launched Builders of Authority back in November. Builders of Authority has a couple different components to it. The main component is a group mastermind. So we have multiple calls every single week. People also get access to a course, a private Facebook group, as well as some accountability calls to help them become the authority in their industry while growing their business using what we refer to as organic social media. So just posting from the Adam and Jenny Facebook page, YouTube channels, things like that. And I just teach them the blueprint, many of which I'll probably touch on here today. And so they adopt into that program because they want to learn what I did and continue to do with my speaking events and throwing events and everything with my content to be
Hmm.
able to replicate something like that for themselves. So that's our main offering. We have one-to-one coaching, we throw live events and a couple other things as well.
Okay, so it's a full circle kind of brand, basically, with a lot of different components underneath, but the main thing, the main driver is the mastermind.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
And so this is being, I mean, you've probably launched, or is it a continual sort of like enrollment, or is it launch focused?
It is continual enrollments.
Okay.
So we have our course that the mastermind itself is kind of based on, that
Hmm.
all of our members get access to. But because personal branding and organic social media, whether it's the algorithms, whether it's the type of content that is really taking off in certain industries. It's a continual evolving door.
Yeah.
We like to make sure that we're bringing the latest and greatest into our weekly calls. So it's a ever evolving open door enrollment.
Okay. I love the rolling enrollment sort of style because it just means that, I mean, well, I love all kinds of launches, but having the rolling enrollment means that you're able to continuously talk about it versus having to do like the 72-day breakdown, lead up and full on launch, which can be quite exhausting. So,
Yes.
how are people getting into the mastermind? Is there a tripwire that's leading them into it? Is it that course you were talking about? What's the lever that gets them in?
So luckily, because I'm teaching personal branding, it's personal branding.
Okay.
So I made a post right after I actually did a free webinar. So I did a free webinar, which I did that and did a lot of promotion for about 2 weeks leading up to the webinar, which was the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. We had 300 people register for the webinar and over 100 people on live of the webinar at any given time. So it was after I did a free webinar based on the 7 steps that are in the course. I launched Builders of Authority. And then we ended up initially launching the program about 2 weeks after that. So I gave it about 2 weeks. We ended up getting to about 10 members when we officially launched. And since then, we've continued to grow the community primarily through my content, my personal branding, me
Sure.
speaking on stage, me throwing my own events, etc., as well as some partnerships here and there. But primarily, what I'm teaching in the course is exactly how I'm getting people into our community.
That's to me one of the better ways of doing it. So just like leading by example and so on. I think that's probably one of I mean, I enjoy that. At the time that we're recording this, I'm about to launch into something and I'm hosting a webinar in advance of that.
Love it.
Yeah, I love the webinar piece. I don't think it's going away. I think a properly done webinar, and whether you call it a masterclass or training or session, I don't care. I still think there's a place for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
still think if people do it right, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but if done right, I think they can create a ton of engagement. They help people learn who you are. I think especially if you create a two-way conversation, if at all possible. And if you hold it live, I think you have a better result. Is yours live or is it now evergreen?
So the initial webinar that we did was live. So
Hmm.
we did do a live one to announce it, and then we have our group calls that happen every single week, twice a week. We haven't done a webinar or masterclass since then
Hmm.
per se, but I do live weekly trainings on Tuesdays, usually when I'm not traveling inside of our free Facebook group community. Whereas also where we get a lot of people that end up leveling up from the free to the paid group. But doing it live that first time, having over 100 people on and the questions just right there, it
Hmm.
definitely like it, I wouldn't have had the launch that I had without that. And I did some really cool and like creative marketing leading up to that. I used a lot of memes. People had been following me for 2 years wanting something paid. So I kind of already had a pool of people that I knew would be interested. But
Hmm.
I really promoted that free webinar, and that free webinar, no one knew that there was something paid coming on the end of it until the last couple of days when I started to say, hey, there's going to be a special announcement, at the end. But so many people have come to know that whether you're a paying client of mine or whether you're just supporting me, whether it's that webinar or in our free Facebook group, I'm going to show up the same way and deliver on what I said I was going to deliver and more. So people just appreciate that. And I think I had built up so much equity with so
Hmm.
many people on social media that they wanted to show up for me on that webinar. And people were sharing the webinar, they were sharing it live, they were sharing clips of it. I mean, it was pretty cool to see.
That's amazing. That's really, really good. I love when you can create the fellowship or the even fellowship, I guess, just the amount of people who can sort of really support you.
Yeah.
I was telling a client actually 2 days ago, I said, you got to invest in the bank of relationship building before you can like pull something out of it. I was like, you got to put like $5 in before you can take a dollar out. Uh, and, because the person's like, well, how am I going to promote this? I'm like, you're going to give, you're going to, you're definitely going to try and put out as much information and like you said, show up and do the thing you said you're going to do. before you ask, you make an ask. And I think that is the right way to go about it. And if it feels really authentic, people notice it. And if it doesn't feel authentic, they notice it too.
Oh yeah, both ways.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got this launch, you've done your webinar, people are coming in, which is great. What was I mean, you don't have a cohort because you're running it all the time, but when you launched it, you had about 10 people, you said?
Yes.
Okay. And when you had those 10 people, was this something like, was it a high-end ticket mastermind? Is that what this is? Or is there like, I need a little bit of detail kind of around that.
Yeah, great question. So we have two different offerings as far as our continuous stuff go. So
Mm,
it's the group mastermind that's $250 a month or $2,500 for the year. So some of those members were in on that plan, and then I also have our inner circle, which is that group mastermind. Plus, they get 2 calls with me every single month, and that's $1,500 a month. So some of the people, it was about 50-50, that first group of people. My first 5 clients that I did one-to-one with are still my one-to-one clients to this day, about 6 months later, but they also are heavily involved in the group mastermind community as well. It's just an added benefit that they get in addition to working one-to-one with me.
all right, I've got a question for you. This might throw you off. A lot of people always go for that high-end mastermind, the 15,000, the $25,000 high-end mastermind. And they're still doing the calls that you're talking about and so on. You've chosen, I mean, I don't know all the details. I'm in your free group. Um, why did you choose to make it relatively, and actually not even relatively, very affordable at both levels versus going, okay, I could probably price this at 15K.
So I'll answer the first question or the second question first, but I undervalued and had a lack of self-confidence of what I thought I could actually sell this for. So
Okay.
that's the raw, real, and transparent answer. Since then, people have been like, "Hey, you need to increase your pricing. You need to do all of those things." And so
Yeah.
I had a kind of an epiphany moment, if you will, back in February where I was trying to increase pricing to 500 a month and then 2000 a month, and I wasn't really getting anybody to necessarily bite on it. And it was
Hmm.
at that moment when I had decided, hey, I'm going to leave the marketing agency and as far as the day-to-day goes, and then I'm going to go full-time into Builders of Authority. And so in order to do that, of course, we had to increase the enrollment in terms of the number of people that were there, which then increased the recurring revenue associated with it because I was walking away from a business that I was getting paid from and owned equity in. And I realized that that was just a really sticky price point for
Hmm.
us to be able to blow people out of the water. And we've even added every member in our $250 a month group gets 2 accountability calls with my executive assistant every single month, one-to-one. So we're over delivering on this inception offer for the people that showed up and have committed to doing, business and life with us, if you will, when they know that we are going to be adding more offers, more things, but those are going to come with additional price tags. So it was kind of my way of giving back, mostly because I've been in the groups where I've spent the thousands and thousands
Hmm.
of dollars, some good, some bad, some indifferent. And I just felt for the people that were following me the most that this was an offer where people didn't have to be like every single month, hey, is this worth it? Is it not? Because this is not a get rich quick scheme, right? It's
Sure.
building a personal brand. It's doing this stuff. So I needed to be able to tap into the market of people that were already following me while making it to where it was a no-brainer for them to stay for the amount of time it was going to need. So we've had a lot of people buy the $2,500 for a year, and people already, on the onboarding call, or we walk through things or they get the course, they're like, this is already worth it. Everything else is a benefit. And I'm like, I understand. I know that. But I also want to give back to the people that have been supporting me and have supported me through the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. And that's a lot of the people that are in this community. We're at, I think, 47. Well, that's including myself and then 2 of our employees. So we're at 44 paid members in our group mastermind as it stands today. Actually, today is actually the 6th month since we announced, or actually went live with the mastermind in December.
Wow. That passed pretty quickly, I'm sure.
Yeah, it did. Absolutely, it did.
Does your model of this over delivering reasonable price, does it mean that your churn is pretty low?
It is. Yeah. We've only lost 2 people. so far,
That's outstanding.
both of which were more so they just didn't show up to the calls. And
Yeah.
actually both of them, funny enough, their business partner ended up joining the community instead of them. So it was almost like we're still getting into there, but a lot of people buy, the year as well.
Hmm.
So we're not having, I mean, we have, about $12,300 in recurring revenue that is coming into the business. And but we also sell a lot of one-time stuff as well. So it's a win-win.
With the low churn and the other events like the in-person events and the other things that you have that are obviously for sale, then you've got those people who are getting a great value willing to probably shell out for other things knowing that they're going to get good value, right? So your per, the amount of money that one person is spending is potentially more based on the other things that you're providing, right?
Absolutely. So we have our second in-person event coming up. We're nearly sold out of that one with about 5, 6 weeks left to go, which has been awesome. We are going to be, as far as an evolution of Builders of Authority, the one thing that we knew we could input into the community immediately was accountability with
Mm-hmm.
Morna, who's my executive assistant. But the next layer that people are asking for is, Adam, can I get a video editor inside of my business through Builders of Authority? I don't want a full-time virtual assistant. I don't want to train them. I don't want to do all those things. Can I get
Sure.
somebody to help me out with content posting or social media, like any number of things that we're getting asked almost on a daily basis about it. So our evolution of this is to be able to increase our monthly pricing. We could do that today if we really, really wanted to, but to have something additional with it being, what does it look like if we have 4 people inside of our community get connected into a Builders of Authority certified VA team? That 4 people are sharing what the cost of one VA would be, but they're not going to need they're not going to need 4 VAs for 4 different things, but they could
No.
have, split payment between all of the other 3 members or businesses in the community. So that's where we're going to be evolving to here over the next couple of months.
I love that. Yeah, it's almost like having a fractional, video editor and you've got your own, you've got your part-time VA, but that person's actually getting full-time hours because it's split between 3 other people, which is good. And if
Yes.
they're integrated into your system, your ethos, then that person, those VAs can then carry that out in a good way. I love that.
Yep.
The people that are in Builders of Authority, what level of business are they? Are these brand spanking new? Is it slightly elevated, slightly, are they, they're settled, 6 figure, 7 figure? What's the average?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. We're honestly kind of all over the board. So we have people that are literally just getting started, a couple people that are trying to get their side hustle to be able to turn it into a full-time position for them, right, with income. Then we have, a $30 million roofing company CEO that's in our group. So there's, like, I tell people, like, those were some of our first clients. It's about the widest spectrum that you could possibly get. I would say the average person, though, is typically doing anywhere from about $100,000 to $200,000 in take-home revenue from their business, take-home income, if you will. But most of them have multiple businesses or want to be known for something more than just their business. So
Mm-hmm.
there's an auto repair guy in our group that for the last 20 plus years, he's been known as Dave the auto repair guy. And he's like, Adam, I'm so much more than that. I want to start a podcast. I want to speak on stage. I want to help the industry out. And I want to start coaching people at some point. I want to start doing X, Y, and Z. And nobody knows me other than Dave, the auto guy. And
Yep.
so those are the types of stories that I'm like, okay, perfect. This is exactly what I'm made to do, because from the beginning, I started with personal branding when I went full time into entrepreneurship, because it was the only way I was going to separate myself from the hundreds of thousands of other marketing agencies that are out there. So while people always have known that I've done digital marketing, now personal branding, coaching, and consulting, they know Adam McChesney at the top of, like, hey, he's a resource that I
Mm-hmm.
can go to level up both personally and professionally. And if Adam can help me, he'll tell me. But if a lot of times I can't help people, I'll be like, hey, go talk to Jenny, go talk to so and so. These are the people that you need to do that. So people don't just come to me for what it is I do. They come to me with a problem and I provide them a solution, or I just tell them, hey, actually, I don't know anybody. So I can't help you, and I'm not going to try to help you because I don't have the experience.
I love being a connector. It's
Hmm.
fun, isn't it great? It feels so like there's a lot of satisfaction in being able to say, yeah, I know somebody who can do that for you.
It's incredible.
It is. And it helps people out more than I don't know. I've been doing this for uh 12 years. Actually, yeah,
Mhm.
I've been doing this for 12 years. And the biggest growth spurts I've had have always been when there's been some sort of really good referral, or somebody's like, Jenny's the person you got to go to. Like, Dave the Auto Guy. I'm Jenny the Summit Queen,
Hmm.
but I'm so much more than that, right? But that's just what
Yes.
I'm known for.
Hmm.
So having people be able to say, "Oh, she also does this or she also does that," is super helpful. And when we all kind of work together and refer people back and forth, I think we all kind of benefit from it, obviously. And I think you get really qualified clients that way versus just cold traffic. I'm a huge organic traffic person myself. So, this whole business I've built is completely on organic. I think I've run ads like 3 times in a
Yeah.
decade.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm fully on board with that. What would you want somebody who is trying to launch a business like you have with a reoccurring revenue membership? What's something that during your launch, what would you want to tell that person that they should avoid or watch out for, or what moment should they enjoy? Because launches are challenging.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was actually walking my buddy through this last week. He's getting ready to launch one. And I was like, this right here is gonna save you a lot of heartbreak in issues and stress, and it's gonna make you a lot of money. So when I launched on the call on that webinar, I had everybody's attention, right? And then I confused the heck out of them. So I actually didn't end up selling anything on the actual webinar, but it was the next day where sales started to come in once I started to have to do some back and forth conversations and make some more posts about it. But when I launched the webinar, I almost didn't have confidence in myself. Or when I launched Builders Authority on the webinar, I almost didn't have confidence in myself. So I over delivered for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, wow, I knew I freaking crushed it. But then I
Mm-hmm.
got nervous when it came to asking people for money because I had never done it before, right? In this Builders of Authority instance, I've sold millions and millions of dollars of medical devices and millions of dollars of digital marketing. But I got on there and I ended up selling, or not selling in the first part, but I said, hey, here's our free Facebook group. Go join this. If you want free, here's where you go. Then I said, hey, here is our group mastermind. Here's what it entails. Here's a QR code that takes you there as well. Here's how much it costs. Here's our inner circle. So here's how much this costs, and here's where you can go to find out about it. Here's what you get, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then here's our one-time course. So if you don't want to join a group, here's a one-time course, and here's all those things. People are so freaking confused, and I was so nervous that I was running through all of those different things that if I would have just had one paid and one free, which is
Yeah.
what I do now every single time I talk,
Yeah.
and that's where a lot of this stuff goes, I would have easily made a lot more money and had a lot more people in the mastermind than we do right now. Again, we figured it out, but that was a huge thing looking back that I'm like, man, I wish I would have made it simpler. Confused buyers don't buy.
No, they
And
don't.
that was a perfect instance.
I hear you. It's like getting the email that has like 10 different links in it.
Yeah. Nobody's
You,
gonna do that.
Nobody's going to touch it. Put 2 links. Sure. People are going to, click the crap out of that, but put 10 links and you're going to get nothing. That's a
Mm-hmm.
really good thing to share. I mean, I know there's a bit of vulnerability in being able to say, I was so nervous I couldn't make my pitch properly, but haven't we all kind of been there? I know I have.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, I have, you're gonna laugh. I've done cold sales. So I used to work for a company where I would go basically door to door to businesses and also do appointment sales. Like I'd go to people's houses and do sales.
Mm-hmm.
And my first call ever was to an interior designer. And I went into her house and I scared the absolute crap out of her because I spoke at such a fast rate without blinking, probably swallowing or stopping for air for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had the whole sales spiel in my brain and it just, it was just verbally coming out, and I never even stopped to check in with her. And I mean, she just looked at me like she had no idea what was going on. And my manager was there, and he actually had to stop me. And he took over, and we did get the sale. Uh, but I had no idea how to sell.
Yeah.
And the transition to going from small talk, or like you're saying, a training, and getting into sales mode is very daunting because you
Hmm.
don't know almost the cadence. It's a weird
Yeah.
thing.
No, so I think one of the other like again, it kind of goes back to self-confidence. I have a recurring theme in my life when I hit something new or something uncomfortable, like launching something for the first time, or I'm at a fork in my road in the business, and I've gone into there's been multiple different aspects of my life where instead of me just running through the wall or whatever, I
Hmm.
try to go around it by partnering with somebody or paying for something that I think is going to get me to the next level. It all comes back down to a lack of self-confidence in myself of wanting to figure out a way in order to get around the wall instead of just going right through it, which is usually what you have to do in business. And that shift and that focus in my mind, like I knew I crushed it, but I knew I crushed it on a free scale. I
Yeah,
hadn't convinced myself enough that, hey, I can charge for this, even though there were people after people like, hey, I'm ready to pay, I'm ready to pay, I'm ready to pay. Sometimes we over analyze a situation or overcomplicate a situation in our own mind, and that ruins what we've already built and what we're actually trying to do.
completely. The self-awareness piece of that, and growing and knowing that you have the confidence, or even having those struggles, is a big deal. It's being able to admit, like I said, it's being able to pull that lever and switch from free to paid, and feel really confident in what it is that you're talking about, that it feels natural, that your cadence doesn't change, that your tone of voice doesn't even change. uh, and nobody knows that you have that confidence thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though you might still, like, I don't know about you, but when I hit record on a webinar, I still have a moment of, oh crap, people are watching.
Oh yeah, like everybody podcast for me now. I've done over 250 over the last couple of years. So podcasts for me now or back then when I originally started are what speaking on stage or doing a webinar for
Sure.
myself is the equivalent back then. People ask me all the time and I'm like, it doesn't get easier, quote unquote. We just get better at navigating the situation
Mhm.
that helps build up the confidence and the repetition behind what we're doing, which creates a better environment from start to finish.
Absolutely. There's a process right there. You should add that into, if you haven't already, that's part of a course right there. I love that. Okay, so we've pulled back a little bit. Your first launch, you said you had about 10 people. Now you say you have about 40 or so in there, which
About
is great.
44.
44. What's the next step? Where is this going? Are you going to go at scale? Do you want 200 people? What's the next step for you?
Yeah, so our next base camp, which hopefully we'll be getting to here in the next week or so, is getting over 50 members.
Hmm.
By the end of the year, our goal is to have 100 members in the community, also with that value add additional offer for that outsourced virtual assistant team where you're in a pod of students if you want to upgrade to that level. But from there, my brother is coming on. He's going to help do some sales and some business operation stuff here in St. Louis with me. But then we're just really going to scale out the customer success or client success side of our company. I don't imagine I grew our agency to about $4.5 million a year, hundreds and hundreds of clients, 175 employees at our peak, and I don't want anything like that. So trying to keep it to where it is scaling, but it's not scaling to the hundreds and thousands. It's scaling maybe to 100, 200, but it's doing it in a way where it's programmed to a sense.
Hmm.
We've hit our base camps almost right on target with where we're trying to get. So we kind of said by 6 months into 2024, have about 50 people, double that in the back half. And then having something additional where we don't the main need from going to 100 to 200 would really just be honestly revenue.
Hmm.
We want to be able to deliver back into the 100 people that we have and offer something additional to meet our goals while getting a bigger impact and charging them a fraction of what they would have to do if they were to go hire this on the open market for themselves.
Completely different aspect than a lot of people. You know this because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people will say, I could charge 25K for this. And
Yeah.
then you're going to have that person, like you said earlier, who's going to every month try and need to justify that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in one of those masterminds and I couldn't justify it because I wasn't getting enough to justify the price tag.
Yeah.
Right. But in something that, and my partner and I feel the same way when it comes to providing value rather than, really sort of bloating that price up because it would create great revenue and it'd be great to say, oh yeah, multi seven figure. But I'd rather provide the value and give something really, really good where people feel they're getting, a really good price or really good value from it. It sounds like Builders of Authority has that. So that's excellent. I love that.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for pulling back. I mean, I didn't want to get into all the nitty gritty because I mean that we're going to be here for an hour, but it was a lot of fun to talk about the launch and where you are now and the direction that you want to go in. And I appreciate you being so honest about it. I know it's only been like 6 months, which feels like such a short time, but at the same time, you've made a huge amount of progress. Obviously, you've got a ton of talent in the field, and that shows and a ton of value that you provide. Can you tell me how, I mean, if everybody's been listening to this, they might actually be like, all right, I got to pause so I can go and find Builders of Authority, but where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place is our free Facebook group. So you can type in Builders of Authority into the search bar. We can also have the link in the show notes, but you can join that group. We have daily content. We have live weekly trainings, usually every single week, and just a bunch more incredible information. We're at about 1,600 members in that group. If you're interested in our group mastermind, you can go to buildauthority.co. You can see all the different options that we have available. We'll recommend the group option if you're interested. And then you can connect with me on social media pretty much anywhere. My name's Adam McChesney on there. But you go to adammcchesney.com and see all my social links. And would love to have a conversation if you're interested.
Awesome. We'll make sure all that's in the show notes. Adam, thank you so much for doing this and sharing a bit more detail. I've been eager for this conversation because I love a good case study. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Jenny.
Absolutely. And as always, if you're enjoying the podcast and you want to get more episodes like this, make sure you do hit the subscribe button. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. And we have so much good content coming up, lots of great solo episodes. I've got some good stuff in the works there, and then great guests just like Adam. Make sure you check out the show notes for this episode to catch all the links that Adam was talking about. And if you like this podcast, again, do follow. Let me know that you're interested. And we also put the full episodes up on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, the Acquire podcast is brought to you by the Odd Phonic Podcast Network. Thanks so much.